In this video, you will learn how to create new widgets in BWB. This is where you can include the software and tools you need for your workflow as an executable module under the Bwb layout. For our purposes, let's make a widget to read in a bash script and execute it. The bash script is just a simple echo statement to take in the user's desired phrase and output the phrase into a text file. You can create such a script by minimizing any window that is obstructing the Bwb desktop, right-click on the desktop, and selecting Genie. Then type the following: the specific bin bash shebang at the top, then echo $1 greater than $output file. The phrase will be stored in the $1 variable. Then it'll be redirected to an output file, which the name of the output file will be stored in an environment variable called output file. The name of this script can be called echo2fish.sh. So let's save the file onto the data directory. Now, to make the widget to run this file, there are a couple of different ways to do so. The first method is by using an existing widget and repurposing it to make your desired widget. This is useful if most of the settings you want already exist in a widget, but you just need to make modifications to it. In fact, the widget we want to make is very similar to the bash utils widget on the tool dock, and all you need to do is make some modifications to it. Let's put this bash utils widget onto the workflow. If you open it, you can see the only entry is the script file input to run. But we want to include two more entries that ask the user to type a phrase and the expected output file this phrase will be stored in. To officially add this widget to the workflow, save the workflow. Once it loads back up again, the bash utils widget is added to the workflow tool dock section, or what we call drawer. Now, let's edit the widget. On this tab, the widget name is still bash utils, but let's rename it to something else, like bash to file, to differentiate it from the default bash tooldock widget. It will need to reload the workflow, but when it opens the workflow again, the widget name has now changed. This is also reflected in the workflow's tooldock drawer. We can leave the rest of the settings in the General tab alone, as you will go back to it later. Going to the Inputs tab, there are two inputs, an input file, and a trigger. These are good to leave as is, but you can have the user phrase be an input for the widget to take in from another widget. The input can be named to something like phrase. In the Output tab, there is an output for an output directory. But since we are expecting a file to be the output, let's edit this output to be output file instead. Don't forget to click on the green plus sign button on the bottom right to make this change. For parameters, here we see the input file for the widget to run. However, we want to make two slight changes to this parameter, as the lettering of the parameter does not exactly match the input from the Inputs tab. This is case sensitive, so let's make the I lowercase. Also, this parameter is currently set as an argument, meaning that the input file path is placed at the end of the widget's command. As you will see later, you do not want to have the file path at the end, so deselect argument. Now, save the changes to the parameter. The first parameter you want to add is the user's phrase. To make this parameter match the input from the Inputs tab, name the parameter phrase. Then set this as a string input and set the label as your phrase. Then, make sure the input file parameter is not selected or highlighted in blue. If so, click on the white space below the parameter. Then, add this parameter. The second parameter is the expected output file to store this phrase. Make a new parameter by naming it output file, matching what you have in the Outputs tab. Then, make this a file parameter and label it output file to store phrase. Before you add it, remember that the script is expecting the output file path to be stored as an environment variable. To make this parameter an environment variable, click env and type in output file to set the name of the environment variable when running the widget. Once these settings are set, add this parameter into the list. These are the parameters required, so now let's move on to the Command tab. You need to set the command this widget will execute. Since it is supposed to run a bash script and take in inputs from the command line, type the following into this tab. --bwb, then in curly braces, input file, then in quotes, _bwb again, and in curly braces, phrase. The command starts with bash to specify the next section of the command could be a bash shell script. Then we add the input file parameter directly into the command, wrapped in the _bwb and curly braces. The final section of the command is the phrase parameter, but it needs to be in quotes so that it can output phrases that include multiple words. If it wasn't in quotes, then it takes only the first word in the phrase. The only section missing is the output file path, but remember that this was set as an environment variable. So when the widget runs, output file will be already set with the expected output file path specified in the entries, and there's no need to add this environment variable to this command directly. The last tab to look at is the Docker tab. If you launch the image builder, you can open the Docker file associated with this widget. This is actually the bash utils widget's Docker file copied over. To practice changing the Docker image for this widget, let's say you want to get a more updated Alpine base image. It is currently set to 3.17.1, but there is a version 3.20.0 available. Let's change that in this Docker file to that version in the from line. You can check what versions and tags for the Alpine widget are available on its Docker hub. Keeping everything else the same, let's save the file. Make the Docker settings for this new widget be something like bwb alpine, then for the tag, 3.20.0. Then build the image. Once it is finished building, exit the image builder and go back to the widget's general tab. Change the Docker image and tag to the one you just created. Then save the widget. Now, let's test to see if the widget you created works. Open the widget. Let's set the bash script. Then the phrase to use. For now, it could be just hello world. Then for the output file, set it to /data/out.txt. Finally, run the widget. Going to the widget's console, you can see it execute, and when it's finished, let's navigate to the data folder to see if the output file is created. Sure enough, the file with hello world written inside exists. Let's save the workflow again with these entries stored. One final change to this new widget is that you can change the icon for this widget so that it is different from the Bash Utils widget. It can be done by simply pulling an image from Google and saving it to the workflow. To do so, minimize the workflow window, right-click on the desktop, and click Firefox. On the top, search for Bash, and save the image you want to represent the new widget. It can be stored in the data folder for now. Then, open up the workflow window again, edit the widget, and enter the path of the image you want as the icon for this widget. Save the widget, and you can see the new icon once the workflow reloads. So that is one way to make a widget. Another method is to load the widget settings from an existing widget into the new widget. This method is extremely useful to do if you want exact settings from an existing widget without manually typing all the settings that the widget currently has, especially if that widget is complex in terms of what it has set up already. Let's add the file widget from the tool dock onto the workflow. It is bare bones and does not function like the Bash widgets. To make it like the Bash to file widget from the first method, let's first save the workflow to officially save the file widget into the workflow. After it loads, edit the file widget and click on the blue Load button on the bottom. It will open a file navigator and ask for you to pick the widget directory you want to copy the settings from. In this case, find the Bash to file widget folder and click Choose. Click Yes to any prompt that pops up. Then you can see all the settings from the first method are now copied over to this widget. Even when you check the Docker file in the image builder, the Docker file is now copied over as well. The only setting not copied over is the widget's name, which is still set to file. Let's save the widget. Opening the widget, all entries and settings are saved and should behave exactly like the Bash to file widget. The third method to add a widget is by building all the settings for the widget from scratch, saving the widget elsewhere, then adding the widget to the workflow tool dock. This is an older method that will take more steps to complete, but this can be useful if you want to make a widget that is very different from the other existing widgets. To start, click on the widget button on the top toolbar and click on New Widget. It asks if you want to create a new widget, click Yes. And then it asks if you want to use an existing widget as a template, click No. Then, name the widget something like Bash Method 3. Once you click OK, you are then brought to the new widget's definition window, but without any settings. Here, you can type in the exact same settings from the Bash to file widget here, but for the sake of simplicity and time, just fill out something random in the General tab for now. Be sure to save this widget, but this time you will need to find a location to save the widget. Let's just make a folder in data that you want to store created widgets and save it there. When the workflow reloads, the widget can be found in that folder as its own directory, but it cannot be found in the tool dock just yet. To add this new widget, click on the tool dock on the top of the screen, then click Edit Tool Dock. Here, focus on the first row that allows you to add a widget to the workflow drawer. Let's navigate to find the Bash Method 3 folder. Once that is loaded, select the drawer of this workflow, then click Add. The workflow will reload, and you can see the widget you added is now located on the Workflows Tool Dock drawer. You can now put this widget into the workflow. Then, for completion's sake, you can use the second method to copy over the settings from the bash to file widget to make this widget have the same settings. And be sure to save the widget. So those are the different ways of creating widgets for your workflow. Thanks for watching.